It was a short hearing, only 10 minutes, in a large, nearly empty courtroom in downtown Miami. It was me, my attorney, and the judge. I was there to plead guilty to a federal crime. The judge asked me questions like, "Do you understand you're giving up your right to vote?" I'm screaming on the inside. I voted in every election since I was 18. My knees began to buckle. "Yes, sir." "Do you understand you're giving up your right to serve on a jury?" I can never have the privilege to serve on a jury again. The attorney had to put his hand on my back to hold me up as I respond, yes, to each question, knowing I must be strong. If the judge decides not to accept my plea, if he thinks I'm not being honest about owning it, I could face 20 years in prison. That evening, I sat at a high-top table at a chain restaurant you'd all recognize, with my sweet, brilliant 10-year-old son. He's an avid reader, and he's just finished reading John Grisham's book series for kids, where he's learned all about mortgages and bank lending. We positioned the stools to face one another. We sat knee to knee. And as I took his hands in mine, I looked into his eyes and I said, "Today, Mommy had to plead guilty to a federal crime." You see, I did not want my son to Google my name and learn about what I did from anybody else. It was better that he heard it from me. He asked, "Did you do what they say you did?" "Yes." "Did you hurt anybody?" "Yes." I dug deep to answer him completely. Even though Mommy did something wrong, I'm still your mommy. I had to admit it to myself and then to everybody else. Most importantly, I just want you and your sister to be proud of me. But Mommy, I will always be proud of you. And I'm even more proud of you now for having the courage to do this. But are you going to have to go away? I don't know, honey. We'll find out at my sentencing hearing. I grew up in a home where I thought I had to be flawless. Like most first-generation Americans, I expected myself to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect friend, the perfect student. My parents are both from India, and as I felt that cultural drive to achieve, I also put a lot of pressure on myself to be infallible. I was the good girl, the nerd involved in everything, top of my class in high school, at UNC Chapel Hill, and at Columbia Law School. If there had been an award given for least likely to go to prison, it would have been given to me. I was strong. I knew all the answers. I did not need help. And I certainly thought I was untouchable. So I bet you're wondering, if that's true, how did you go from Miss Goody Two-Shoes with an immovable moral compass to a guilty plea? Well, I had an important client who asked me to backdate a document that he just forgot to do. He asked me to execute some creative transactions one might suspect aren't right. But I didn't ask the hard questions. You know, the ones that would have made all those deals, fall through. This is the slippery slope that before you notice becomes a downward spiral. You make a split-second rationalization to do something once that you normally wouldn't do. And it seems like it went okay. But then one thing becomes two. Eventually, you find yourself doing something over and over, unaware that a pattern has set in. The consequences for my actions were lighter than for some, more severe than we had hoped. I spent about 6 months in a federal prison. I had a lot of time to wonder how this could happen to a good girl, raised by great parents, raising terrific kids. How could I let this happen to me? I was now 05121-104. I wore paper clothing between facilities. I was handcuffed and shackled with a waist chain. I was transported in armored vans. And every few weeks, my parents and children, 9 and 10 at the time, drove 10 hours round trip to hug and kiss, to talk and play games. I can still remember my daughter's tight embrace as the guard's clock would hit 3 and she was pleading, "Mommy, don't go." In hindsight, I can see what I did not recognize then. I had convinced myself that the financial stability afforded by these actions made them okay. I was supporting my children after all, but it was more than that. I needed to feel important. I had to achieve that cultural level of success. I wanted to keep up appearances. I had to have stature in my community and to live at the level of all my friends. But if I had just paid attention, there was a vague gnawing that something was wrong. If I had listened closely, I would have heard my inner voice warning, "You can not be doing this." There was a defining moment. I remember getting an email from that same client letting me know of something wrong. My stomach lurched into my throat. I agonized about what to do because I felt stuck by then. But I had a fiduciary responsibility. I had an ethical obligation to speak up, to take action, to stop the people around me from continuing that fraud. But I didn't do anything. I looked the other way. You see, not doing something is doing something wrong too. During that government-imposed opportunity to reflect, I decided that the only way this would never happen again was to be really honest with myself and to listen to that inner voice that I had been ignoring and to make the best possible decision that I can every time. I call this ethical vigilance. At one point, I was taken across state to testify in another case involving that same client. I spent 23 days in a county jail. Above me was a prostitute heroin addict. Next to me, a homeless person who was peddling drugs. And above her, a 24-year-old meth dealer trying to figure out her life. I cooked and ate with them. I watched movies and played cards with them. I slept with them. I tried to get them to work out with me. And I cried with them. I never before would have met or been exposed to these women in my other life. I would have passed judgment. I would have been so sure that I was better than them. What I learned is that they were funny, loving, and gracious women. They were good people who had made bad decisions too. My story includes a prison sentence and a conviction for a federal crime. And it takes work daily. But I do not let this define me. At my core, I know I'm a good person who made a bad decision. All right, I made a series of bad decisions. But I do know where the right side of that ethical line is. I bet each one of you can identify a time when you let a gray decision slide, or you stood mute in the face of something ethically questionable. Come on, can't you? Is there any place in your life where there may be just a little self-delusion, where you can feel the slipping and the sliding? You can stop it. Imagine yourself putting your foot down to guard against sliding down the slippery slope. You can anchor yourself to ethical vigilance. Here's how. Pause. Listen to your inner voice. Reflect. Do an ethical reality check. And then make the best conscious decision that you can, that you sense is right, no matter the consequence. Sharing this story is my contribution. I want to stop otherwise good people from making that first bad decision, leading to a similar fate. Do you think it could never happen to you? It is my life purpose to pay attention to study and share the need for ethical vigilance in everything we do. It is the ongoing restitution that allows me to live with my profound remorse, so that what I allowed happen to me doesn't happen to you.